This is another Tampa Bay chemtrail update. You can see lots of chemtrail activity out there recent. These tiny little lines of persistent jet, what do you call it? They want us to call it contrails, okay? I get that. But there's a lot of pilots and a lot of experts that say that contrails are not persistent. And even if they were saying, and I'm sure there's experts and other people saying that contrails are persistent. I don't know about that. I've not heard any experts saying that they are persistent. I've only heard experts saying that they're not persistent. Certainly, again, if you listen to these, you know I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm just going to keep saying it over and over again because I always make the assumption that nobody listens, and then if you do happen to listen, it'll be your first time. So, certainly, the idea, the concept, the basic idea of a contrail, which is vapor created by the wing of an airplane moving through the air at a rapid pace. I don't exactly know the scientific principle that causes the vapor to be created by that. I guess it might be friction, maybe. The relative temperature of the wing moving quickly through relatively cold air. Maybe it's friction and it causes vapor to be created. I don't know. But I mean, obviously when air masses of varying temperatures interact with each other, it does create vapor, right? I mean, that's what creates clouds. So they're saying that when an airplane, the people that want us to call these persistent trails contrails, they say that, it's the vapor of the airplane wing moving through the air at a rapid pace, and but I mean, I don't think that you can have vapor that is the width of the airplane. And when you watch these things actually taking place, what is coming out of the back of the airplane is instantaneously as wide as the airplane itself. So stereotypically, a contrail is just a little trail of vapor coming off the tip of the wing. So maybe let's just say it might be 3 feet wide, but when you actually watch these trails being laid down, they're 100 feet wide. That just defies, to me, it just defies common sense. It defies anything that's sensible. So there's that. And then there's the fact that they're persistent, that they last for hours, half a day, entire day, and longer than that, which is what I'm going to discuss today. And then there's the fact that after these are laid down, like even during the time that I've been talking, you can see that those really skinny, newly laid trails have expanded. And as they expand, now, if it were vapor, as it expanded, it would disperse into invisibility, right? But these disperse, and they disperse, and they disperse, and they keep dispersing until they're 10, 20, 100 times the original width. And they maintain their original visibility, original level. You can still see it very clearly, right? So, regardless of what any experts might say, because you can pay an expert to say anything, I mean, experts are scientists, and scientists are stereotypically in need of cash, and like artists to a certain degree, not quite to that degree, but somewhat in that direction. And there are unscrupulous scientists. I mean, maybe they don't need cash, but if you offer them enough, they'll say whatever you want them to say. They'll come up with the data, they'll come up with the rationale, it'll all be sophistry, it'll all be nonsense, but they don't care. It's cash to them. So, and maybe they convince themselves even. So let's give them that benefit of the doubt, because data, I can speak from experience, data is subject to interpretation. And if you're motivated to interpret it a certain way, you can persuade yourself that it should be interpreted that way. So It's all about motivation. Now here you can see, what I want to talk about today is persistent contrails. And by persistent, I mean contrails that last more than a half a day, more than a day. Contrails that last, or chemtrails or contrails, I'm going to call them chemtrails. Chemtrails that last, potentially, theoretically, for weeks or months. What I really only want to talk about is chemtrails that last for days. Because I notice when I go to work in the morning, the sky is sometimes perfectly clear. And then on the way home, it's totally trashed. So it's about 40%, 50%, sometimes 60% covered in clouds. And after several hours, like you can tell that since I've been talking, that one chemtrail right there, it has dispersed enough such that if you didn't see it in the beginning, and if you weren't keenly paying attention now, you would not know that that used to be a chemtrail. You would just think that's a long, skinny cloud, right? And that's exactly what I want to talk about. Because these things spread out, and the wind blows these things together, and they form these giant blankets of whatever that chemical. Everybody that online talks about it, the scientists and the pilots and the this and the that and the that and the this, they all say that it's, actually Al Gore says this. There's a major geoengineering guru says that it's this. It's sulfuric acid. It's aerosolized aluminum, or as the British say, aluminium. It is aerosolized barium, which from what I understand is a radioactive metal. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I understand. And then it's also, everything's aerosolized, but I'll just keep saying it anyway because it's a big word and people are impressed with big words, including me. So I'm impressing myself here. Aerosolized strontium. Now, I don't know what strontium is, but I think that strontium is somewhat comparable to barium, in that it is also a radioactive metal. Now, how do you aerosolize a metal? That I do not know. I have no idea. But apparently it is possible. So, the thing is, like I said, the other day I went to work, the sky was perfectly clear. I came home and it was just totally trashed. Now, it was something like that. It was something like what we're looking at there. Now, that's either cloud cover or it's pollution. And I honestly don't know which one it is. But my suspicion is that these chemtrails that are persistent, and they persist for hours and hours and hours, half a day, I think that they can even persist for several days. So what happened was, like I said, I went to work, the sky was clear, came home, the sky was perfect, was totally trashed. So I think, and then the next morning I woke up and the sky was perfectly clear, with the exception of the sky in a 360-degree view all the way around, up to about, I want to say, maybe 20 degrees from the ground. Okay, so what's that? 1/4, 4.5 or whatever. 1/4 of a of 90 degree. At 90 degree, it'd be straight up. So 1/4 of the way between, directly at eye level across the plane of, where I am, and I want to say the Earth, but I won't say that. What we live on is called a planet, by the way, and the root word of the word planet is, if I'm not mistaken, is plane. So I don't know, just a little observation there. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the etymology to see if in the original language, the etymology of the original language, if that's consistent in that respect, but just in a general observation respect, the root word of the word planet is plane. My suspicion is that if you go back to the the root language, Greek or Latin or whatever it is, that my suspicion is that it is not consistent that way based on some things I've heard. But a general observation can sometimes be of value. If it contradicts, official scholarly things, well, then the contradiction can be of interest, and if it's consistent, the consistency can be of interest. So anyway, it's just a general observation. So that's that. So basically, like I said, when you look around, it was like up to about 20 degrees was a silvery, was what I would describe it, a silvery kind of haze. Now when I look at this blanket, this pollution blanket or this cloud blanket, whatever it is, right now it's coming off as kind of grayish, but there are many times it comes across as somewhat silver. So, and you could say that this is like a dirty silver, but I'm not going to say that, even though I could. I'm just going to say that it's gray because it is. That's the way it strikes me at the moment. There are other times when it strikes me as more silver, which is kind of interesting. If in fact it is true that the stuff coming out of the back of these airplanes is aerosolized metals, like aluminum, for example. So now, obviously, whatever's coming out of the back of these planes could be dirty. I mean, it probably is dirty. If in fact, these are chemtrails, like Al Gore and David Keith say they are. It probably is very dirty. I mean, it's probably dirty, nasty, poisonous stuff, which they admit that it is. So so that morning when it was silvery gray, 360 degrees all the way around, up to about 20 degrees in the sky from looking straight ahead, 20 degrees up. It looked like a bowl. It looked like, as opposed to a blanket, it looked like a bowl of pollution. So it seemed like that during the night, things had kind of settled down and fallen to the ground. And that as you look through the atmosphere, you can't see it all around you because it's not that dense. But the assumption would be that it is there. But you can't see it for, say, 5,000 yards, maybe. You can't see it for 10,000 yards, maybe. But as you look out through the sky, once the depth of the atmosphere reaches whatever, I mean, I have no idea, 30,000 yards, 50,000 yards, I mean, I have no idea. But the point is that once you get enough atmosphere between yourself and your line of sight, at the end of your line of sight, you can see the stuff. You can see the poison, the aerosolized aluminum, the chemicals that the idiots who are trying to save the earth by polluting the sky, like Al Gore and David Keith say, with poisonous material, with poisonous metals that cause Alzheimer's, metals that cause autism, metals that cause reduced mental activity and brain tumors and all kinds of neurological disorders and cancers and stuff like that. These morons, of course, they're not morons. They are Luciferian evildoers, basically. They're mentally deranged billionaires, fourth and fifth generation billionaires, mentally deranged, probably not gifted or talented or skilled or intelligent in any notable way. It's just they inherited billions and billions of dollars from grandpa and great-grandpa and daddy and whoever else. And so, they think they're better than everybody else, so they have to come up with these plans that transcend anything else that any of us are engaged in. And so they end up thinking that it's up to them to save the earth, so they invent a global, using the term global because of the root of that word. I'm using that term loosely. The global, they invent a global crisis to be solved by a global solution, and this global solution involves a tax on all humans for everything that produces carbon, which is basically any living thing. If you have a bird, you can be taxed because that bird has a carbon footprint. Your dog, yourself, if you run a lawnmower, if you have a car, if you use electricity, I mean, so it's total control. And then they end up poisoning us as well because they're lords. They're lords. So it's their duty and their responsibility to control the population. So control means culling. Control is synonymous with culling. So these people become very predatory in their personalities and in their approaches. And as we all know with predators, they go after the weak and the infirmed. So this pollution they're putting up into the sky is targeted towards the weak and the infirmed. They'll knock out 2% of the... So Alex Jones calls it an ambient global holocaust. So killing tens of millions of people over a period of decades, as opposed to all at once. And it's very unspecific, and it's very non-discriminatory, but it's targeted towards the weak and the infirm, because those are the only ones that will be affected by it. But in the process of killing the weak and the infirmed, once those are sort of peeled off, then you create a new class of weak and infirmed. And so it's like a creeping holocaust, basically. Until they get the population to where they think it should be, then they'll start having different approaches to things. And so anyway, I think that perhaps this blanket of what could theoretically be just simple cloud cover, theoretically I think it might also be the accumulated chemtrails laid down over the period of a month. They settle to the ground, the sun comes up, the sun hits the aerosolized metal, the metal heats up, the heated fog, or whatever you want to call it, begins to rise up into the sky. They lay down fresh chemtrails, and it's just an accumulation of pollution that targets the weak and the infirmed to relieve these global elites of the burden of having to figure out how to care for these people. And then again, it exposes a new class, the next 2%, and then the next 2% becomes weak and infirmed, and so they target those. And so like I say, it's theoretically it's just a slow rolling, very non-discriminatory global holocaust. So that is the theory. What we're looking at, you look at these airplanes for yourself. You do have to be pretty sharp. You got to be pretty alert. You got to catch them while they're laying down these trails, and then you have to watch these trails and see what happens to them over a period of hours. And if you believe that an airplane can lay down a trail of vapor that is as wide as the airplane itself, that trail of vapor can persist for hours and possibly days, and as it persists, remember now, it's only vapor. As it persists, it expands to 10, 20, 100 times its original width. And as it expands, it maintains its original visibility. And then as it expands, it combines with other trails. And then these trails of quote-unquote vapor create these enormous masses of vapor blankets. You can kind of see it looks like those sheets of cotton my mother used to use when she sewed. And you take a piece of it and pull it apart with your hands. That's what it looks like. Now again, that could be clouds. Agreed. I don't know. But like I said, you watch these now. See, there's one right there, a chemtrail that's obviously laid down by a plane. Now that thing is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and wider and wider and wider. And as it expands, it's going to maintain its visibility. I mean, that's very odd for vapor. I mean, I've never seen vapor behave like that. I never could imagine that it would behave like that, especially in something as expansive and as vast as the sky itself. So anyway, all right, that's the chemtrail report for today. God bless you, everybody. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.